And I gotta say, one thing that is true in pretty much most performance or creative oriented industries is there's not one universal path to get where you are.
That is true.
And, some people have some pretty unique paths, and I would say you're no exception to that. I loved reading through your journey to a successful career in voice acting, starting out in modeling, pursuing on-air acting, then doing voices in a one-woman stage show, getting discovered, and here you are.
Here I am.
I mean, that is a really cool story. I mean, it just kind of is, it's got to be one of those things that makes you feel like it was just meant to be. Because I find it interesting that you were doing voices on stage, and then that's what led to your first opportunities as a voiceover, which I think really kind of leads me to one of the first things I'd like to ask you is just kind of where the fascination of doing character voices came from to where it would start on a place like on stage.
Well, I think I've always loved stories and I've always loved telling stories. And often when I do so, I use voices to express myself. I've always done that, whether I'm imitating the people that I'm talking about or I'm trying to give my listener a better sense of exactly what transpired.
Okay.
I just feel like if I don't do the voice, how are you going to know exactly what happened?
Okay.
So it's just sort of been a means of communication for me for a long time. And I think humor has always been a tool for me. It helps me connect with people. And I think doing voices seems to make people laugh a lot more than, just telling a dry story. So
Yeah.
I think it was born out of the desire to connect and communicate and make other people laugh. And the agent who came and saw me, she saw me in a sketch comedy show. And, there you have it, doing voices to make people laugh.
That's
So
really cool.
all kind of came together. Yeah.
When you look back on that, is there a point or two where you wonder if you potentially made a different decision that things might have turned out differently?
Yeah, they could have definitely turned out differently. I really wanted to be a writer. And while I can perform, I didn't necessarily need to. And I still write because I enjoy writing.
Sure.
But yeah, maybe if I hadn't been discovered in that way, maybe I would still just be telling stories, sort of typing them out rather than speaking them.
Yeah.
Who knows? Yeah, it's a good question.
Well, your parents are both people in the film and TV industries. Your mother is, of course, Joan Van Ark, who had a very extensive career in film and television. Your father,
Yeah,
John Marshall, is a distinguished journalist and reporter for KNBC in California.
that's right.
What did you learn from them that maybe helped you pursue and succeed in your career choices?
Well, my dad was a pretty hardcore news reporter,
Yeah,
and he was always seeking the truth, and he felt that it was his duty to present that to people who needed to make decisions in the voting booths. And he took his job very seriously. And I think I, too, have tried to sort of find the truth behind different stories, myths, and that curiosity and that desire to talk to people and ask them questions, I think probably comes from watching my dad do that. And then equally watching my mom perform. I think maybe I'm genetically predisposed to, do the exact same thing.
yeah,
So stand-up comedy was a very good fit for me because I found that I could sort of look at the world almost like an anthropologist and reflect back what I see to, people at the comedy club and sort of muse on these things, almost like reporting back from my journeys, roaming the earth. I would sort of come and report live to the Comedy Store audience or at the Improv or wherever I happen to be, and then do so in a very colorful fashion, much the same way my mom would communicate something. So I'm definitely the combo pack of those two humans.
makes sense.
Yeah,
Well, I
funny.
really like the aspect that you bring up about truth because someone I've interviewed in the past that I really love on the screenwriting side of things is Robert McKee. And
Cool.
his
Yeah,
his big thing has always been write the truth, write the truth, write the truth. So
yeah,
I think there's
yeah.
definitely power behind that.
I agree, definitely.
Well, I've read in previous interviews your overwhelming excitement when you got the chance to voice characters like Mary Jane.
Yes. Yep.
And
Never forget that. I was doing a Honda commercial, and they were taking a bit of a break. And so I answered my phone. I saw my voiceover agent called, and she's asked if it was Mary Jane on the other end of the phone. And I said, I don't know. You tell me. And she told me that I'd gotten the part, and I just fell over.
what a great way to tell you.
Yeah. Crazy. I was just so grateful. Man, I was just, yeah, I really, I'm a huge Marvel fan, so that was a really big honor.
Yeah, and it's interesting to look at the portrayal of comic book characters in both voice and physically on screen because, it's so intensely competitive for those on-screen roles, especially because you've got the look and the voice and then, of course, the pressure of pleasing fans. But
Right.
how competitive is it to get roles like that when you're talking about getting that voice right?
Well, I think at a certain point there is no competition because everyone brings something very special
Okay.
to the mix. And I think it's really a matter of sort of the synchronicity of whomever is listening to the group that they need to sort of put together. I think it's a matter of what plays well off of whatever anyone else is bringing. So it's kind of like getting an orchestra together or a band together. And, it's not that a piccolo is a horrible instrument. It's just that it doesn't really fit with the banjo,
Right.
and so I think all the instruments are sort of equal value, but it's really a matter of what is going to make the best sound all together. It's sort of a very lucky thing when you're chosen to be a part of a certain band. I mean, I felt that was the case with Star Wars Rebels, no doubt. I mean, I think they really put a group together that are so truly like their characters. It was really amazing to be a part of and, see just how shrewd Dave Filoni is in terms of uniting all those different energies to form, what was a really wacky family.
Yeah, but very entertaining and very engaging
Yeah.
and believable too, which is so important when you're especially when you're connecting to a franchise like Star Wars.
Right. Exactly.
You bring up how it has to be the right thing at the right time, and then of course the story that's being told. I mean, you have experience on that sense too, because I noticed that you really wanted to have an opportunity to voice Wonder Woman, and I believe the first try didn't work out, but you eventually did get a chance to voice Wonder Woman.
Yes, I did indeed. Andrea Romano cast me in Dwayne McDuffie's final work, which was the Justice League Crisis on Two Earths. And man, was that an honor. And there have been subsequent Wonder Woman roles since then, but that was really, words could not describe.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Thrilled I was, yeah.
It's always kind of interesting too, if you've watched it and someone brought a voice to it in one story or even a platform sometimes. It's always really cool to see, okay, who's doing Wonder Woman this time or this character this time.
Right.
Being a Firefly fan, I remember how kind of cool it was to see, I think it was Gina Torres did Wonder Woman for the DC online game.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, she is so talented.
We're sitting here talking about, Wonder Woman. You've been able to bring a lot of memorable performances to the big franchises. We've talked about Star Wars, DC, Marvel, and video games. That's obviously included too. And a lot of people know you for those roles. What are a couple of characters you've given voice to that maybe fewer people or maybe some may not know that you really love doing and haven't had a chance to talk about much?
Well, in the regular show, I played a character called Toothpick Sally. And she had a toothpick in her mouth, and she was pretty gruff. They described her as a female Clint Eastwood. That was a lot of fun. And in the Metal Gear Solid game franchise, I played Olga Gerlakovich as well as Dr. Strangelove. And those are two pretty intense characters.
Yeah, I love those games.
Yeah, not a lot of people know about that, or a lot of people say like, "Oh my gosh, you played Olga, you played Dr. Strangelove." And then also having played Irwin on The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy,
Mm-hmm.
he's like a little kid. He looks like Urkel. And not a lot of people had that, they were really kind of like, wait, what? Crossing gender and racial lines with
Yeah.
little, yeah. What's up, yo?
Isn't that fun? Just to just kind of flip the switch and the voice is there.
Yeah, it is. It's
I
lots of
really like Toothpick Sally. Toothpick Sally needs to come back in some form or fashion. I got a
I
feeling
agree.
she needs her own Twitter account,
I know. Yeah, I know.
if
That's a
anything.
great idea.
I mean, yeah, I mean, those are the ones that, oftentimes you hear that are definitely closest to people because they're so unique and they're not necessarily one that everybody knows, but they know them.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I've talked with several voice actors, and sometimes they have very little to go on when they step into the booth. Sometimes you're just told to go. You may not even know what the project is.
Right.
So what is your creative process when you flip that switch, as we were just talking about, to bring a voice to life? Is there kind of an imaginary visual aspect to it, or is there some personal preferences involved? Are you thinking about the audience at all? Kind of how do you approach it when you step in to do something?
I think it depends on which area of voiceover we're dealing with.
Okay.
If it's animation, it's one process. If it's commercial, it's another. If it's a radio station ID, that's another. If it's a television promo, I mean, it really varies. I think being specific and making things personal tends to help make the sound of it more specific and less contrived.
Mm-hmm.
So I usually like to go from the inside out. And if it's something I don't identify with, I personalize it and make it something I do care deeply about. And I think that the listener can hear that.
Sure.
And I ask myself a ton of questions. I do a lot of research. Again, it depends on the genre. If it's animation and it's a character that's been done before, I look everywhere and find everything I can about it. If it's a commercial for a certain product, I look that up. I look at previous commercials. I will look at competitors' commercials. I'll see how I can help them distinguish their brand.
Good.
I'll look at ad agency articles about who had the account last and why it might have gone elsewhere. All these little pieces of information help me make a strategic choice, like I said, that's specific. And it sort of makes it fun. It makes it fun to give them my best shot. And while they might not hire me for the job, they'll respect me for my attempt at giving them something that's a viable option.
Yeah, I remember talking to Alan Oppenheimer about.
Oh yeah,
about yeah. I mean, who also has done obviously, as you know, a variety of different people for different types of shows.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how when it came to Skeletor, they just kind of showed a picture, of the guy's head or something and said, all right, what do you think this guy sounds like?
Yeah.
And that's what he came up with.
That's crazy. Yeah. Sometimes we get drawings, sometimes we don't. Sometimes they kind of want to see what we'll bring to it on our own.
Sure.
And other times the direction is like crazy specific. The temptation is to be a good dog and bark the way you've been asked to bark. But sometimes you have to do something a little off center to make it just a little bit more unusual. If everyone's a good dog, they're going to get the same sound over and over and over.
Right.
There's a little bit of finessing something that's a little special somewhere along the line to give them what they've asked for and yet to make it your own.
Well, when you're watching or listening to something that involves voice acting, do you ever find yourself analyzing what might be going on or critiquing some of the work you're hearing?
It happens sometimes when I have auditioned for something and I hear the spot and then I hear what they went with. I learn a lot from that because the audition specs were one thing and then what ends up on the air is quite another.
Yeah.
And I think to myself, did that person just do that read for the audition, or did they get directed back into this other place that seems to be the more formulaic read that sells things best? In some ways, it's sort of like being a detective, I just sort of wonder like, maybe I should have just done that read. But then again, it's possible that they were directed there and that's not the read that booked the job.
Yeah, right.
So I just meditate on these things. It's not so much a criticism as it is, I'm trying to learn from, what I put out there versus what ends up on the air and why, because I'll never really know the full answer to that. I just sort of file it away and keep it in mind the next go round.
Well, I think we grew up around the same time. Were there afternoon programs or Saturday morning cartoons a big deal to you? And were there any characters from those programs that you look back on and said, man, I would have loved to have voiced that character?
Well, I don't know about voicing, but I definitely loved Rocky and Bullwinkle, and I loved Foray. The cartoon I enjoyed watching the most was Tom and Jerry for some reason.
Ah, okay. Not a lot of voice there.
Yeah, no voices at all. But there's just something. I mean, I like hockey and I like boxing, and I don't know why I enjoy when people are like fully committed to things. There's something a bit, with Tom and Jerry fighting all the time. It may seem violent, but I don't know why the way the cartoon went, it was just so funny to me.
Yeah.
And perhaps it's because, I didn't have brothers and sisters, so no one was punching me.
No one was after you?
Yeah, exactly. So that was sort of my version of having cartoon brothers and sisters and horsing around. I don't know.
That's cool. I mean, that gives you a pretty neat way to say Tom and Jerry were your siblings.
There you go. Pretty much. Yeah.
I have a friend who's, I was trying to remember how this went down. It was something along the lines of this kid he knew got adopted, and they go to the court proceeding to make everything, official, and he had a stuffed Kermit the Frog with him. And the judge said, "And who is this?" And he goes, "Well, this is my brother, Kermit." And so when they signed up all the paperwork, they actually put down that Kermit the Frog was the brother. So this guy literally shows paperwork that Kermit the Frog is his brother.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'll have to figure some way to do the same with Tom and Jerry.
Absolutely, I would. I mean, that's something that could definitely go on your Twitter profile.
There you go. Exactly.
Two things that have taken place over the last several years. You've got first the explosion of geek culture in the mainstream.
Yeah.
And then the increase of more inclusion in these stories. How does this space look to you now versus perhaps when you first started pursuing this as a career?
I think the roles are the same. I think the casting choices are more on point these days.
Okay.
Which is to say that I think most likely there are more diverse roles, but it seems like what I am applauding more than anything else is I loved it when David Oyelowo was cast as Callus, a Caucasian character. It seems like the casting choices are more unique these days, and I'm thrilled to see that. That there's more work for people of color, and that there's colorblind casting, particularly at Disney. And I love seeing that. I definitely think there's more of that than when I first started, for sure, which is great.
Well, and the other trend I think that has to have a lot of meaning to you as well is just new chances people have to discover this media. I mean, we're seeing a rise of things like fiction podcasts and audiobooks now that feature multiple voices, music and sound effects, where voice acting is really center stage because there's no visuals, but now people have all these different ways to listen and kind of indulge in their own way, in their own imaginations.
Definitely. That is by far, there are so many more platforms and different ways that people can be exposed to all sorts of entertainment. It's awesome.
Well, today you're not only doing a lot of projects and having the chance to meet fans at fan events and conventions, but you're also running your own voice company.
Yes.
Marsh Kish Productions. And what do you have happening there these days?
Well, basically, my production company employs me, and
Right.
And I record and produce dry sound for different production companies and radio stations, and basically the full whatever it is that I happen to be doing during the day, and I work in all areas of voiceover. So I'm a one-woman show, and the production company, it basically is just for my business.
Yeah.
And it's great.
That had to be kind of a really great step in the process, too, to go from, getting an opportunity to do your first voice acting experience to later have it become such a big part of life that it allowed you to launch your own business and kind of create your own opportunities.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was very exciting. I think it happened in 2003 is when it started.
Is there something you're working on now that you want people to know about? Some upcoming projects that maybe not everybody knows is around the corner?
I'm really grateful that the last half of season 3 of Guardians of the Galaxy just launched.
Yes.
And it's a very interesting animated bit there where each of the characters is sort of thrown into their own animated stylistic world. And Gamora's worst nightmare is a princess world full of bunnies and birds.
I can imagine.
But all the animation styles are really, really unique. I've never seen anything like it. So I'm really proud of that work, and grateful that that's on Disney XD. And there were quite a few video games and other things that I've been working on. Mortal Kombat 11 just came out. And I play Shiva in that.
Nice.
And so people can check that out. There's a really cool cartoon that hasn't been announced that I look forward to letting people know about, and a few other various things that, of course, I'm not legally allowed to discuss. But if people check out my Twitter feed at Van Marshall, or if they follow me on Instagram, Vanessa Marshall 1138, they're more than welcome to, keep in the loop. And I can't wait to announce these really cool projects.
You can just make a list and do kind of like what Disney does. You'll have things that you can mention, and then when you get to things that aren't quite ready to be revealed, you just put it in parentheses, like I think they do untitled Marvel movie. You could just do parentheses and say, really cool animated show. And then you just fill in the blanks later.
Well, they should be launching very, very soon. So hopefully, it's the hardest thing to stay quiet.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. I'm doing promos right now for a new CBS show called Love Island. So if you hear anything on CBS while you're watching other programs in between, you'll hear commercials for a new summer TV program called Love Island.
All right. So I'm going to run through a few of your voices. And just tell me the first word or phrase that comes to mind when I say their name.
Okay.
All right. Poison ivy.
Green.
Makes sense. Mary Jane.
Face it, Tiger.
Irwin.
What's up, yo?
Olga.
I was raised on the battlefield.
Gamora. That's pretty good. That fits.
She cracks me up.
She is awesome.
She really cracks me up. She's just so earnest. I love her.
Hera.
Strength.
And finally, I know this will be the most challenging, Female 2 and Red Faction 2.
Silence.
I love the Red Faction games, by the way. I remember playing those things.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
My brother and I, still to this day, someone will say the word minor, and we'll go, just you and me, minor.
That's great.
Those were great games.
Yeah, they were. I wish I could remember what I said as female number 2.
I didn't really expect you to.
Yeah.
I just wanted to throw a curveball in there. Because, it is actually, as I was going through all the different characters, and I was pulling just some of them that I think most people would definitely know. And then, of course, some of your favorites. I just thought it'd be fun just to, it's always kind of fun to see those names, and then all of a sudden, Female 2.
That's great. That's great.
I tell you, it was a great conversation as expected. I'm so glad that we got to cover so much ground in such a focused amount of time. And you mentioned some things you can and cannot talk about. So I will just say I'm looking forward to all of those.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for taking time to share your experience and thoughts about your career and all the great things you're doing. And thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. It was an honor to talk to you. I really, really appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Yeah, me too.
Thanks.